Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Wake up, Mr. West, Mr. West, Mr. Fresh, Mr. By himself, he's so impressed. I mean, damn, did you even see the test? You got D's, motherfucker D's. Rosie Perez, and yes, barely passed any and every class. Looking at every ad, cheated on every test. I guess this is my dissertation. Homie, this is basic. Welcome to graduation. Good morning.
Good morning. This is Ed Sanders. I am filling in for Dominique DePrima. This is First Things First. You are listening to KBLA. We are coming to you live from Leimert Park in the Crenshaw District, Los Angeles. Today is October 5th. It is 7:06. If you are getting out the door, getting in your ride, if you're out exercising, we are thankful you are listening to KBLA 1580. We hope that you are either listening to us live on the radio or you have downloaded the app. Follow us on YouTube, on X, Instagram, Facebook. We are bringing you unapologetically progressive talk. As we look at these and start the day, let's take a quick snapshot of top stories. The start of the day, we're looking at the outcome of President Donald Trump's fraud trial. It is entering day 3. The former president is flying out of New York. He's not going to attend the trial, but New York Attorney General Letitia James is pressing forward with her case. The former president accused of overvaluing real estate properties in an effort to fraudulently obtain better loan terms. The House Republicans are creating chaos in Washington, D.C. After ousting Speaker Kevin McCarthy, there is no clear consensus on who will replace or become the new Speaker of the House. This after McCarthy brokered a deal with House Democrats to to pass a continuing resolution that keeps the government funded for another 45 days. We are looking at and watching the fallout from MAGA Republicans really tearing apart the Republican Party and thus tearing apart this country. We'll find ways to react to that in the next hour. We're also paying homage to late Senator Dianne Feinstein. A memorial service will be held for her later this afternoon in San Francisco, the city where she was mayor for a number of years as the first female to hold that office. Expected to speak there today, Vice President Kamala Harris, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and Mayor of San Francisco London Breed. And on a humanistic side, we're taking a look, and we're always keeping an eye on the 75,000 healthcare workers that work for Kaiser Permanente that are out on strike, on a 3-day strike. This is the biggest strike in healthcare worker in U.S. history. We're monitoring that. As I started on last hour, we are definitely concerned about that industry, particularly as we have just come out of a pandemic. The amount of work, the amount of strain that our healthcare workers had to endure to get this country through the pandemic. I'm rooting for them in their negotiations with their employer. I am Ed Sanders. I am filling in for Dominique DePrima. I am sitting in the chair. Miles Lowe, you got me going. I appreciate you being in here with me today. You're making this easy to do. I need a number. We got to come up with 6 numbers by the time we're done out of here.
I think the first one is, let's go 23.
23. You hear that, KBLA listeners? We're going to pick the Powerball jackpot.
Yeah, 23 sounds like a good one.
Yeah, no reason $1.4 billion in Saturday's drawing shouldn't be cut up amongst listeners to First Things First. How's that for a promo, right?
NIL.
Last hour we were talking with Ray Richardson, the KBLA sports correspondent and host on Saturday afternoons at 7 o'clock. of Out of Bounds here on KBLA. We were dissecting, a number of different issues with sports and particularly how it impacts African Americans, whether we were talking about the professional sports or collegiate sports, particularly when we look at the onset of the NIL deals, the transfer portal, how this is impacting movement, how it's impacting opportunity, but more importantly, how we as a community need to be able to capitalize on it. I think what we came up with and what I think most people know is there is a lot of opportunity out there in the sports world. We as African Americans play a pivotal role. One of the things that we outlined in the revenue generating sports, we occupy a very significant portion of the athletes in those sports. And thus, whatever impacts those sports impacts us, and it impacts our children, and it impacts, the future. But that's not the sum total of our existence, right? When we look at what's going on in politics, when we look at what's going on in the world, one of the things that we know that we always have to focus on is our education process. And when we start looking at our young kids and how we're preparing them for the world, education plays a forefront in that. When we get back on the backside of the break, I'm going to bring forward Patrice Marshall McKenzie, who is a school board member in Pasadena. I've known Patrice for a number of years. She's recently elected, and really looking forward to a conversation with her around some of the things that we can do to improve our educational outcomes. For those that are listening, if you want to call in, 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. Again, Ed Sanders, you're listening to KBLA 1580 Talk Radio.
More of First Things First with Dominic DePrima when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here with a quick recap from my time at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. There were speakers Ian Dunlap, Damon John, Lynn Richardson, MC Light, Don Kennedy, to name a few. Take a listen to what Justin Grant, Community Development Lead at Chase's Advancing Black Pathway, let's see what he had to say.
So I'm Justin Grant. I lead Community Development and National Partnerships for JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Pathway strategy. And so we're focused on strengthening the economic foundation of Black communities, and we're making targeted investments in programs like the Advancing Black Wealth Tour to help us get our tools and resources out to the community to drive sustained impact over time.
So when it comes to Black and brown people, it sounds like Chase is making it their personal responsibility not only to facilitate these events, but to educate and provide resources. So Mr. Grant, I have to ask, what does wealth building look like for the individual?
It's home ownership. It's having that freedom to be able to start your own business and create jobs in your community. And it's having that long-term plan towards retirement, having that vision for what you want your life to be, and you have the resources to actually live it.
I'm Maisha Cairo. Thanks for sticking around. That was my recap from Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. First stop was here in LA, and they're taking it national.
Do you have heart failure and often hear,
"Those stomach issues ruined your birthday"?
"You're too tired to play catch, Grandpa."
Sweetie, you haven't touched your tools since the carpal tunnel syndrome diagnosis.
If these seemingly unrelated symptoms sound familiar, talk to your cardiologist. Ask about transthyretin amyloid cardiomyopathy, or ATTR-CM, a rare and underdiagnosed disease that gets worse over time. Learn more at connecttoyourheart.com. That's connecttoyourheart.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
On your period, sudden gushes happen without warning. But now, you can say goodbye to stand-up gush fears, thanks to Always Ultra Thins with rapid dry technology. It absorbs gushes 2 times faster than the leading store brand and gives you up to 100% leak-free protection. Hello, clean and comfortable with Always Fear No Gush.
The conversation continues right now with Dominic DePrima on First Things First.
Good morning. This is Ed Sanders. I am filling in for Dominic DePrima. I am sitting in the chair this morning, and we are talking about all things progressive. one of the news stories I didn't mention at the top. The Biden administration announced on Wednesday that it's forgiving another $9 billion in student loans for borrowers that have been a part of an income-driven repayment program. The conversation on loan forgiveness, in times where I've come on the show, Dominique is a big fan of that, and rightly so. When we start looking at college access, the ability to affordably get a college degree, particularly for our community, is an important goal. And, so kudos to the Biden administration for pushing that forward. When we start to look at the state of California, we know that 1 in 5, roughly 22% of the state holds a bachelor degree. And so when we start talking about earning potential, it is a key driver. In the last hour, we talked a little bit about athletics as a pathway to college. I think it's more appropriate to pull back and have a deeper conversation about what we can be doing to help our young people who are matriculating through elementary and high school, how we can strengthen their opportunities and put them in position where they can secure their future. Today, I'm joined by Patrice Marshall McKenzie. She is a Pasadena Unified School Board member. Patrice, I have known for a number of years and was delighted to see that she was elected to the Pasadena School Board. In 2020, she co-chaired the successful Yes on Measure O school bond campaign, which helped raise capital for infrastructure and particularly, more importantly, the visual and performing arts and STEM curriculum advancements. So, Patrice, good morning. Welcome to First Things First with Dominique DePrima and special guest host Ed Sanders. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. I hear we have caught you walking to school. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing this morning.
So I'm getting ready to walk to school in just about a half an hour. In observance of California Clean Air Day that was yesterday, we are focusing on walk, bike, and roll to school, which a program that teaches students road safety, how to be healthy, promoting activity and mobility. So we have a large delegation of students, parents, family members, community members, public officials, and public safety experts that are going to help us walk our students from a gathering point to a local elementary school this morning. So we're going to be going to Norma Coombs Elementary this morning, and I'm super excited to join them on their walk to school day.
Good deal. I know safe passage to school has always been important to you, to us. Are there any elements? I know through the years there have been a number of different conversations around transportation, whether it's crosswalks, controlling speed. In putting this day together, is there a reason to sort of amplify this? Have there been an uptick in road emergencies involving children over the past couple of years?
There really has been. I think that everyone's sort of in a hurry to get from point A to point B, and sometimes we just have to sort of take a beat, remember that when we are driving into school zones, that there are young people who are walking, riding bikes, riding scooters, who may or may not be as cognizant of moving vehicles as we should be as drivers. So I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are being safe, we're being mindful, slowing down just a little bit. That also includes being good neighbors and following the valet line if you drop your students off at their school. I am always horrified when I see parents pull up to the second lane or the third lane in the middle of the street, stop their car, let their children out, and they walk across moving traffic to get into the school. I know that it takes a little bit of time to go through the valet line, but it's really for the safety of everyone involved. I would hate to see an unfortunate accident solely because we're in a little bit of a hurry.
No, agreed. And so, look, you are you have taken the honorable jump into elected office. You are representing your community on the school board. I know that you guys have an interim superintendent. Tell me a little bit about what's happening with the community in Pasadena and education. What are you looking forward to over the next couple weeks?
Well, we do have an interim superintendent. She is fantastic. She's been in the district for a long time. She's very knowledgeable and capable, and she is keeping us moving forward. We just adopted a strategic plan in August, and so she is working to make sure that implementation is moving forward without break in service. We're also looking to launch the very beginning of our community meetings associated with our Black Student and Family Success Task Force. This is probably a first of its kind historic investment in making sure that we are looking at the school district top to bottom to see where we are getting it right for Black students, where we are missing the mark, and looking to engage in a really holistic process of examining curriculum, examining training for faculty and staff, examining social emotional supports, examining how we can engage our community partners better, and looking at how we really look at our schools being the centers of our community and the ways in which all of us have a role to play in being able to accelerate student success, academic outcomes, and, really taking a proactive role in preparing our students for what they do when they leave us after graduation, be it college, be it career, or entrepreneurship pathways. And as a former student in PUSD from K through 12, this is really, really an honor to see this work being able to move forward. I'm super happy to have championed the proposal to sort of secure the funding for this endeavor, and really look forward to being able to engage community and how do we get it right for Black students moving forward.
So, question for you. This is first things first. We always dive in on progressive politics. When I look at the state of education outside of Los Angeles and Pasadena and LA County, when we start to move across the country, there has been this movement by the far right to expunge critical race theory as a catchphrase. What we really know is it's an effort to erase African Americans from the history books. What's been your take on that? Have you seen any movements like that locally?
California has about 1,015 school districts across the state, and many of them have a very wide variety of priorities, wide variety of constituencies, and very different needs of individual communities. So while by and large we do not see a huge, huge push for the effort to not teach full, inclusive, accurate history, which is American history, which does include African American history, which does include being able to have access to textbooks and literature and other materials that are being able to tell full, inclusive stories. We do have some pockets here in California where there are efforts being made to not be as inclusive. I'm not sure if you heard about the Chino Valley Unified School District, which tried to pass an ordinance there that would require families to be notified if students are choosing to identify as a gender other than their assigned gender at birth. And the students invited State Superintendent Tony Thurman to their school board meeting, and he was not permitted to speak by the members of the Board of Education. They literally turned his microphone off.
Yeah,
I'm
not surprised.
Not 30 miles from us.
Yeah,
but we can't say that it's not happening here.
Yeah, I teased it. It's just outside of LA County. When you start to look at more inclusive communities and progressive leading communities, it really is Los Angeles and sort of the urban cores. There are definitely parts of California that look more like parts of Mississippi and Florida in their leaning and their political leaning and their approach to it. At the top of the segment, you mentioned a task force that was focused on Black student achievement. One of the things that we were talking about the other day really was how Pasadena Unified might react to a recent bill that was signed by the governor that mandates early dyslexia screening. And so Senator Portantino, who's from your region of the world in Pasadena, introduced this bill, carried it over 3 years. It finally passed. Governor Newsom signed it into law earlier this year. But ultimately, it's going to mandate testing. California is now California is now number 41 on the list. Sadly, they were one of 10 that had not mandated early screening. Curious to get your take on how the school district might react to the early screening, what steps you need to take to be prepared for it, and then ultimately what that might mean for the African American population in Pasadena.
Well, I think that it's really important for us to be able to acknowledge and say thank you to the legislators and to the governor for making the investment in dyslexia screening. It's a very, very common learning disorder that can be treated, corrected, and mitigated very, very early on with a little bit of intervention. So there are a number of efforts through the California Dyslexia Institute that are rolling out a series of virtual trainings on how to assess, how to train educators to mitigate, how to support students. And we hope that we will be very proactive, making sure that that training goes out across the state to our educators and ensuring that we are giving our educators the tools that they need to be able to be better equipped to support their students. And I certainly am going to make sure that Pasadena Unified is a proactive effort in that training. We are certainly wanting to make sure that for Black students who may tend to over-index a little bit on the dyslexia diagnoses, that families and teachers and students are aware, are not stigmatized, and also have the tools that they need in order to be successful in the classroom.
Agreed. Reading by the third grade is one of those markers, and one of the impetuses around the bill. When you look at students that struggle to read proficiently by the third grade, those are the students that tend to have trouble continuing their education career. They struggle through middle school, they struggle through high school, and in a lot of cases represent a good number of the dropout population. This is an important issue, right? And when we start to look at education in general and some of the understanding how we can close our educational gap, this is one of those issues that we've got to pour more energy into and definitely more resources into. One of the things that I know school districts do and focus on are, from a personnel standpoint, are reading specialists and aides that can help with students that are struggling in school. I know you've been creative in advocating for more training and more skill set and frankly more available resources in that regard. Any other thoughts there that you want to add?
Yes, I would also say that we cannot discount or ignore how important early education is. I think exposing young children to words and reading to them at the earliest ages possible really, really pays dividends in the future. So we have to really look at how do we make investments in our earliest learners. So that means making sure that we're bolstering and supporting our preschool programs, our, kindergarten programs, our transitional kindergarten programs. Did you know that if your kid doesn't turn 5 before September 1st, they can't actually go to kindergarten? They go to transitional kindergarten. Making sure that families are aware of what those learning opportunities are for our earliest, youngest learners. Because being able to start the practice of word acquisition, hearing language, hearing words, and being able to start having people read to them at that early age really sets the foundation for being able to sort of accelerate the learning of reading and comprehension later on. So I think that one of the things I'm really focused on is how do we make sure that we are growing and really exposing families to the opportunities to really take the leap and put their kids in preschool and kindergarten as early as possible.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, there are education and learning starts at home, right? Your point about reading is should be well heard by the KBLA audience here today. One of the things that as a parent, you look out and the authors of these books. There are so many books now on the market written by African-American authors for African-American children. Finding ways to get those books and read them with your young child is so important. Having students prepared for kindergarten is really one of the first markers of success. Patrice, question: how can people follow you? How can people follow your work? We're at the bottom of the hour. I want to make sure folks can follow your work and stay engaged with you.
So I'm on all these social channels at Patrice, 4 Pasadena.
Outstanding. Patrice, look, thank you. Let's hope that you get safely to school today. Thanks for joining us this morning. You're listening to KBLA 1580. This is First Things First.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. In Maryland, students and alumni of Coppin State turned out for a prayer vigil last night to show support for the victims of the shootings at fellow HBCU Morgan State. The shootings left 5 people injured, though none suffered life-threatening injuries. 4 of the 5 are Morgan State students. Police continue to search for the suspect. Boston University has named Dr. Melissa Gilliam to be the school's next president. Gilliam, an African-American woman, is currently the executive vice president and provost at Ohio State University, and she'll start at BU next July. Gilliam will become the first woman and first black person to be president at Boston University. The appointment was confirmed by the BU Board of Trustees yesterday. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Lowe's knows fall is the perfect time for outdoor projects. Right now, you can keep your yard looking its best and save. Take care of leaves with leaf blowers starting at just $89.98. Lowe's knows home improvement. While supplies last, see store for details.
Is this the This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers will play Arizona in the National League Divisional Playoffs. Arizona swept Milwaukee yesterday in the best-of-3 wildcard round. The Dodgers and Arizona kick off their best-of-5 series on Saturday at Dodger Stadium. The Rams saw something at Wednesday's practice they hadn't seen in a while. Wide receiver Cooper Kupp caught some passes from quarterback Matthew Stafford. It was Kupp's first full practice since he went down with a hamstring injury in August. Barring any complications, Kupp could be in the lineup for Sunday's home game against Philadelphia. LeBron James said Anthony Davis is now the face of the Lakers franchise. Lakers fans would rather see Davis stay healthy. Davis has missed 114 games over the past 3 seasons. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
At City National, we listen to you.
I want to expand my business and my legacy.
I want to set up the next generation for success.
I want to see my vision come to life.
I want to feel right at home. Your goals, passions, vision, future. We want to hear it and work alongside you to achieve it. Visit cnb.com to learn more. City National Bank. Here for our clients and communities.
Escalade IQ, this the intro to the all-electric Cadillac, perfection like Zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the stop. Haiku, this is what I do. Daddy fat intellect since 92. Linked all the way back, panoramic roof. Come with 24-inch rim standard. Ooh, why? Shorty don't kill him. Cadillac diamond in the back, cold chillin'. And when I'm on attack, on the track is no ceiling. Sky's the limit, you hear me? You hear me? Straight drop, no parachutes. Lay lines like a longitude and latitude. Deal it, beloved, clearly we're hustling. Bustin', truckin'. Cadillac, Cadillac, Cadillac.
For more on the Escalade IQ, visit Cadillac.com.
Available late 2024. GM estimate 450-mile range. On a full charge based on development testing and/or analytical projection. Consistent with SAHA 1634 revision 2017 MCT. Range subject to change prior to production. Annual rates may vary based on service factors, including ambience temperature, terrain, battery age, and condition loading, and how you use and maintain your vehicle.
As veterans, we're no strangers to helping others.
That's what we were taught, service before self.
But we do have one question for the veterans listening.
When was the last time you reached out for help?
If you or someone you know needs resources, whether it's for stress, finances, employment, or mental health, don't wait. Reach out.
Find more information at va.gov/reach. That's va.gov/reach.
Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
Only 1 in 5 people with autism are employed, despite many having the skill set and desire to work.
Maybe it's because employers don't know what kind of jobs they can do. Like, what about a programmer?
That's a job for someone with autism.
How about a healthcare worker?
Yep, that is too. People with autism can do a lot of different jobs, but often get overlooked due to outdated stigmas. Introducing WIN by Autism Speaks. We help businesses lead the way in inclusive hiring.
What about a ranch hand?
To learn more, go to autismspeaks.org/win.
Find a righteous rage and don't be afraid to say what you see. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
Good morning again. This is Ed Sanders. I am filling in for Dominique DePrima. If you are surprised to hear a male voice on the microphone this morning, Dominique is out. I am happy to sit in the chair this morning. I enjoying this morning's conversation. We were just joined by Patrice Marshall McKenzie, who is a school board member in Pasadena, and she was sharing some of her thoughts on how we continue to improve educational outcomes particularly for African American children at a local level. One of the things that we focused on and conversation pivoted towards was the need for early reading skills and what that means. We know that proficiency in reading by the 3rd grade is really one of the key markers that defines educational success outcomes, particularly for our community as we move forward. One of the elements that we highlighted was Governor Newsom, the legislature, passed legislation earlier this summer that mandates California to perform screening for dyslexia at the early grades. So between kindergarten, 1st and 2nd, the state schools are going to be mandated to do early screening. This is an important piece for us as a community. I want to raise it up to all of us to sort of ponder and begin to think about, because I don't think that we talk about the issue of dyslexia enough when we start to look at the raw number of people that may be afflicted by this learning disability. It in some cases it could be as low as 10%. I've seen some estimates as high as 20% of people have some form of dyslexic learning impediment. And so want to further that conversation. On the line now, this is our guest is Risha Conroy. She is the executive director of the Dyslexia Alliance for Black Children. This is a nonprofit organization based in New York, working to eliminate the amplified inequities for Black children experiencing unaddressed dyslexia and related learning disabilities. Risha, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Fantastic. We're in Los Angeles. We're going through a little bit of a heat wave. It's going to be 90 plus today. I understand you're in New York. Hope things are well for you.
Yes. Well, the weather here is mild, so no complaints.
Look, I'm excited. I'm excited to have you on. The first part of this hour segment, we were speaking with a local school board member, and she was stressing the need to dedicate resources and energy in the early childhood phase of the education, that getting our community and our kids reading proficient by 3rd grade was a key goal. One of the things that I outline is one of those elements that we've got to look at is how we deal with children that have dyslexia, and are we dealing with dyslexia in the right way? Through your work, you've been at the forefront of this for a number of years. I want to get some of your impression, one on sort of the scale of the problem. What do you see first for African Americans nationally regarding dyslexia?
Yes, so thank you for that question. And that is really the why, what brings me into this space. So I'm the mother of a son who has dyslexia. And although I've worked in education, I wasn't as familiar with dyslexia as I needed to be to advocate for him on the level of advocacy that was required in our public schools. particularly for a Black male sitting in the classroom. So what I have come to learn and what I've experienced and what I've heard from many other families is that for Black students, dyslexia often remains undiagnosed or later diagnosed, or it's misdiagnosed. And a lot of that has to do with, of course, what's happening in the general education classroom, teachers and school districts not having a good understanding of dyslexia, but it also has to do with what we have seen historically, which is low expectations for Black students. And that was what I experienced with my son. I had difficulty getting him a diagnosis. I had difficulty getting him the appropriate intervention, but I also heard the language of low expectations for him. So when he wasn't reading at grade level, I heard things like, well, it's okay if his reading is on the low end of average. And nothing about my story was unique. It is echoed through our community. And unfortunately, there is a lack of awareness, but there's also a lack of support and resources to navigate your way through the educational system when you suspect dyslexia or you're just seeing reading difficulty.
And for our listeners, let's try to define what dyslexia is. I think there's a lot of misperceptions and connotations about what dyslexia actually is. How do you define it relative to as a learning disability?
Yep. So dyslexia is a specific learning disability related to reading, and it's really reading at the word level. It's neurobiological in nature, which means that it's brain-based, and it's differences in the way the brain processes the sounds of the language, right? And we need our sounds in order to be able to read and to attach them to the letters, to be able to decode. And it's important to say this, it's completely independent of intelligence, right? So if you have dyslexia, it doesn't mean that you have any issues with intelligence. You can, have a range of intelligence and have dyslexia. So that's the other thing that's really important to mention as well.
You highlight that, and I want to echo that. I think, and part of what you were laying out with the language of low expectations and the problems in getting a diagnosis are clear. In California, our governor, Gavin Newsom, is dyslexic. As we understand, he was diagnosed when he was 5 years old. And to your point about intellect, we see someone with dyslexia that has now become the governor of the greatest state in the union. So that there aren't necessarily limitations on where dyslexics can ultimately go. It is a question of how do you diagnose and how do you now, wrap around services and training and learning techniques for them. When you look at overall the advocacy point, and what you raised was the need to advocate on behalf of your child. From what I can tell, that conversation is really key. And, I want to kind of raise that, and let's dive into that a little bit more. I need to take a quick break, and then on the backside, I want you to tell a couple stories around really the horror stories of what advocating or not being able to advocate, or advocating and then not being heard means for your child. You're listening to KBLA Talk Radio. This is First Things First.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
At Susan G. Komen, we believe that ending breast cancer needs all of us working together. Because if you've just been diagnosed and don't know where to turn, we've got you. If you can't afford the treatment you need, we've got you. And if you are driven to honor the loved one you've just lost, we have a place for you here. Because of you, we're supporting those who need help today while tirelessly searching for tomorrow's cures. Visit Komen.org and be a part of our Susan G. Komen community today.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look, and unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at the gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
A sense of peace, a place to kick back and put down roots, a lasting legacy. However you define home, at City National, we're committed to helping you get there with our City National Ladder Up Home Loan Program. Find the full benefits at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National Bank, here for our clients and communities. Ladder Up program is available only in select areas. Terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS ID 536994.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Your ancestors' favorite radio station, and your favorite morning show host. Let's get back to Dominique DePrima right now.
Good morning again. Ed Sanders filling in for Dominique DePrima. This is KBLA 1580 Talk Radio. We are having conversation with Risha Conroy. Risha is the executive director of the Black Dyslexia Alliance. Risha, before break, we were talking about the need to advocate from a Black parent's perspective. At a certain point, as a parent of a young person who seems to be struggling, as a parent, you get worried. And you want to talk to your teacher, you want to talk to the school, you want to figure out how you can help your student learn. What are some of the problems that you see Black parents running into particularly?
So the first problem stems from what I talked about before, this idea of low expectations that we see in our school systems. The issue with dyslexia, and when you look at the long definition of it, it says that it's difficulties with reading that are unexpected. So there's some degree of subjectivity here, right, in determining what's expected and what's unexpected. And so very often in a classroom, you can have two children who present the same. One is Black and the other one is, non-Black. And the Black student is thought of as a poor reader, right? You're just a poor reader. There's no expectation that you should be reading at grade level. And then the other student who's non-Black, when they see the difficulty, it's like, well, why aren't they reading at grade level? Let's figure out what's going on. So very often the onus is on the parent to say, well, no, I expect that my child should be reading at grade level, and then to very often have to fight with the school to do the appropriate evaluation and then to get the appropriate intervention. And that is very difficult. There are not clear pathways in the public education system to do this. So very often parents have to reach out to private evaluators. They may have to reach out to an advocate or an attorney to fight for their child to have the appropriate intervention in school. And it all comes at a cost, right? So it comes at a financial cost. It comes at an emotional cost. It comes at a cost when in terms of your time. And families are often navigating this alone. As a Black family, when you are reaching out in a lot of our advocacy spaces, you don't see other people that look like you. And so you're dealing with dyslexia, but you're also dealing with systemic racism in our schools and bias. And so you don't have anyone to sort of echo back and say, you know what, this happened to me too. This is what I did. Don't do this, try this instead. And so, very often you're going through this journey alone, and it's time intensive, and time is not in our favor when it comes to intervening early, right? So the earlier you intervene, the better, because our brain is more plastic when we're younger, and intervention won't take as long. So it's critical.
So you mentioned cost, and the cost of a private evaluator, I can imagine, is not cheap. the price of hiring an attorney to advocate or an advocate to retaining someone's services is not cheap. One of the statistics that I saw that really sort of jumped out at me, actually two of them, reading proficiency by the end of the third grade for fourth graders among African American boys living below the poverty line, that only 10% of that segment was reading proficiently. And, to all of the points that you just outlined around low expectations, the amount of resources and ultimately energy put into educating. If you don't have, the ability to hire a private evaluator or advocate, what do you do then? What is a parent's option at that point?
Yeah, so you can try to identify some free or low-cost options within your community. So I often tell families to look to their local universities that may be able to do testing, typically with a graduate clinician who's supervised by someone who's licensed. But, that was one of the things that I did as well. I turned to a local university to do some of my testing. The school can do some of it, and you can supplement that with the additional things that you need in order to really hone in on it. In terms of getting an advocate, there may be also some low cost or free resources for that. It's, with attorneys, a lot of them will take the case on and, be paid after, but that's a little bit scary for families when it's like, well, I don't know, what the outcome is going to be. So, looking for free advocacy as well. Our organization exists to be able to sort of build these collective resources. So we do provide monthly information sessions with a special education attorney. So you can, it's a starting place. You can, drop into one of the sessions and begin asking your questions there. We'll also help and support and reach out to our network to see if there are individuals in, your area that might be able to help you as well. But it's typically a fight, right? And like I said, with all of the things that I'm saying, you cannot do it alone. And that's one of the things that I wish I understood early on, is that I needed a lot more support to navigate the journey, because getting the diagnosis is just the beginning.
So let me ask you this. Let's say you've gotten through the first mountain, which is getting the diagnosis, and you've got it in hand. You know that your child has some form of dyslexia. The path forward, what is the actual treatment or the exercise? What happens? What do you do for a child once you know that they are dyslexic?
Right. So some of it is going to depend on your school system. It's also going to depend on how dyslexic is your child. So typically, if a child is moderately to severely dyslexic, you would hope to get an IEP, and in that IEP to have intervention that is evidence-based. So what we're talking about now is something called structured literacy. So it's explicit and it's systematic. That means that there are no assumptions made about what a child knows. Everything is taught very explicitly to the child, and it's taught in a logical way, right? And it's taught until the child has mastered it, and you build from early skills to more complex skills. So that's the intervention that you're looking for. That type of intervention can only be delivered by a teacher who is trained. So that's the other issue that you run into. Once you get the diagnosis, then you have to hope that there's someone in your school building who's trained in structured literacy to deliver it. And unfortunately, what we also know is that many of our schools of education are graduating teachers who have not been trained in structured literacy. And so a lot of times the pushback that you get from a district is because they don't have anyone in the building who knows what to do. And then that becomes another fight, right? So does the district pay for private tutoring? Do you seek to send your child to a private school that specializes in dyslexia intervention? It's another path to sort of navigate, but that's initially what you'd be looking for in your school building.
And one other element that you can probably imagine comes along with that is, I would say, the lack of African American teachers that are trained in structured literacy. I think I've always been a strong proponent of teachers that one, you would hope that they're culturally competent, but even more
Right.
so that you could find role models within the community to help teach as well. And so, I'm a big proponent of finding ways to increase the number of African American teachers. And it sounds like we need to focus a little more on creating African American teachers that are trained in structured literacy as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. And they go hand in hand, right? So, most of our teaching profession, the majority of it is white women, right? Black teachers are certainly underrepresented, which does, present issues when it comes to culturally responsive, teaching. Certainly it's going to come across in terms of the bias that we have, or even just the connection to community. There's no reason why a Black student shouldn't, have at least one Black teacher, if not more, in their early education experience. And we have, a lot of data that shows how important that is. But in addition to that, if you're not culturally, responsive in your teaching, and I think if you're coming into the community from outside, then you need to have cultural humility because you don't know. And so respect for the community that you're serving is critical. And so that is an area that needs to be addressed sort of hand in hand in terms of bringing in more Black teachers, and for our non-Black teachers, increasing their cultural responsiveness and humility when serving our children.
Yeah, agreed. I was mentioning at the outset, the state of California this year has now passed a law that would mandate early screening for dyslexia. And that bill took 3 years to pass. California lagging behind most of the country. 40 other states were already screening for dyslexia at an early pace. For this issue, and if the estimates are right, if 15% of people have some form of dyslexia, why is this not more of a national conversation, let alone a conversation within our community? Why doesn't the nation seem to be focused on this as it should?
There are a lot of reasons why. So it's a system, and it means that it requires, system-wide change, everything from the schools of education to what's happening in the school buildings in terms of practice. But for Black, students and for our community, we have always had this ongoing battle with literacy and education, right? From anti-literacy laws during periods of enslavement to present day, which I call present day anti-literacy laws. It's sometimes you have to follow the money, right? It kind of goes hand in hand with what is the educational agenda. And so we're starting to see some changes, and I'm hopeful, but I want to see those changes transfer over into the communities that need it most, the communities that have been underrepresented in these spaces.
Agreed. Risha, your organization, Dyslexia Alliance for Black Children, as I mentioned at the outfront, is really sort of the leading voice for African Americans that are trying to navigate this space. You guys have an upcoming conference. Why don't I give you a moment just to talk a little bit about what you expect to do, what you expect to accomplish, and how folks can engage?
Yes, thank you for that. So our conference is coming up. The title is Transformative Literacy Practices, Nurturing the Souls of Black Children. So we're leading with love. We're leading in an unapologetic way and with focus and purpose. And we are bringing together some of the greatest minds in the space of literacy and equity to address and to begin to create a Black agenda for literacy. So our keynote speaker is Dr. Bettina Love. And our closing keynote speaker is Dr. Tracy Whedon. We have individuals coming from the background of speech-language pathology. We have individuals coming from the background of the criminal justice system, because we know that there's a connection there. A lot of our undiagnosed individuals with dyslexia are overrepresented in the prison population, so that's school-to-prison pipeline. And we're all coming together to share research and to share practices. And like I said, to create this agenda for literacy. And it's happening on November 4th and November 9th. So it's a 2-day virtual conference, and you can find it on our website, which is dyslexiablack.org. That's DYSLEXIA black.org. Or you can follow us on social media. Our handle is @DyslexiaBlack.
Risha, thank you. I can't thank you enough for your time this morning on this important issue. You've been listening to KBLA 1580. This is First Things First. We'll be back in a moment.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. In Maryland, students and alumni of Coppin State turned out for a prayer vigil last night to show support for the victims of the shootings at fellow HB